Euthanasia, the debate is alive and kicking. Now, this comes after a French doctor who works in the emergency services of a hospital in the southern town of Bayonne has admitted to killing several elderly patients to relieve them of their suffering, he says. Now, euthanasia is illegal here in France, and he's been indicted for allegedly poisoning 4 of these elderly patients in the last stages of their life. Now, the doctor has fully defends his actions, and it's interesting to note that he's been getting a lot of support online. Now, at least 6,000 people have signed a petition saying that it's inhuman to let people suffer like this, and they should have a right to die in dignity. Now, Libération's editorial is dedicated to this issue. It's called Poisoned, and it says that it's important for this issue to be debated, and to be debated in Parliament, because it says that euthanasia, though illegal, is somewhat tolerated. It occurs, and it's important to have some sort of a legal binding, laws governing euthanasia. And it says that it hopes that in the lead up to the 2012 presidential, this debate really will be, discussed in Parliament. And it says that the government has failed to address this issue, even though it's addressed other rights to life and death, and concerning abortion, contraception, and even the death penalty. And it hopes that, like in Belgium, the Netherlands, and Switzerland, the government will accept the fact that people have the right to live and die according to their own philosophical concepts. And according to Libération, this is not a question of dignity, but a question of freedom.
Okay, one of those stories that keeps coming up, isn't it? French papers also looking across the channel, aren't they, to London, trying to find out why this escalation of violence last week.
Absolutely. Libération, once again, goes back to Tottenham, where things kicked off, and asks, what happened in Tottenham? Why did this poor and multi-ethnic neighborhood burst into violence last Saturday, sparking a wave of riots across the country? And it says that locals are trying to understand the causes of the violence. And according to, so far, the government's answer has been that it was unjustified and uncontrollable violence on the part of looters, what they call the sick part of England. Now, David Cameron's response, the zero tolerance policy with looters. A lot of people, according to Libération, are backing this, though he has been criticized for his slow response. And a lot of people are blaming budget cuts for the rioting. But so Libération sent some journalists to Tottenham to see how people are cleaning up, trying to show that their communities are still close and tight, and that a lot of people have put messages of peace and on boarded up windows. And so it shows how these communities are trying to understand what happened.
And Libération also talking about and comparing it to the riots that we had here in France in 2005.
That's right. There's an article by Laïa Raoult, who is the vice president of SOS Racisme, which is an association here. And she says that though the riots in London and the riots that we had here in France in 2005 occurred in different political and cultural contexts, that there was a very similar chain of reactions. Now, in France in 2005, there was this wave of riots that occurred across the country after 2 young men were killed trying to avoid a police check. And according to this article, so that there are these similar tensions between locals and the police, which are accused of racial profiling. There's also this social ghettoization of putting poor people in areas where they're with budget cuts and social programs. And finally, there's this combination of high unemployment within the youth population and this feeling of not being on a level plane concerning the job market. Now, according to this article, all this leads to this ethnico-social time bomb.
Okay, and finally, we're going to talk about the countryside, which is very apt because it's kind of French holiday time just starting to wind down here, isn't it?
Absolutely. Today's a bank holiday here, the 15 août. It's very big here. It always marks the end of summer. And so it's quite telling that the Parisien headlines on the countryside and how it makes French people dreamy. Now, this comes as there's a very popular TV show this summer here in France called L'amour est dans le pré. It's kind of a dating kind of reality TV show. And Le Parisien explored this phenomenon of people wanting to return to the country. And they interview an anthropologist called Jean-Didier Urbain. Pretty funny because urbain means urban in French. And he says that there's a myth, this Robinson Crusoe myth, that leads people to want to go back to the country. But he says that their idea of the country is very far from the reality. They have a very clean, computer-friendly, insect-free view of the countryside, which is far from reality, according to him.
What would the countryside be without insects? All right, Florence, thank you very much. That's Florence Villeneuve here with the French newspapers here on France 24. Let's have a look at the headlines then. Back in court, the former president of Egypt, Hosni Mubarak, returns as the process against him resumes. He's pleaded not guilty to the killing of protesters during the revolution. Arm yourself to save Libya from traitors and from NATO. The latest speech from Muammar Gaddafi.